I'm trying to find any project, try and find the flow state. And so I try and find like, what's that mood that actually helps the edit or actually helps the directing idea. You kind of have to find that vein somewhere of like
Yeah.
creative excitement. Even though it's dysphoric, it doesn't make sense to that project. At least it gets me in a place where I can try
Yeah.
and push the boundary, even if it's just a little bit.
A garden of pure ideology.
Yeah, just your typical Super Bowl car ad.
Or a hilarious beer ad.
Break was over 15 minutes ago, Mitch!
I think you're the best ever.
I think we're gonna be here a while.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Filmmakers and Advertising. This is the third episode in our series of director interviews from the roster at Cry, a creative, production, and post house behind this podcast. This week, we talk with director and editor Ryan Vera about his creative process, how he finds his flow state, and how he maintains authenticity in a noisy world. If you know Ryan, you know he is a creative force. He excels at combining the disciplines of music, story, and visual art to all his projects. In today's discussion, you hear Ryan talk about his start, key influences, and even his early days as a young Cry intern. He also talks about process and the specific ways he finds the musicality of editing in a flow state, how he does his own sound design, and how all of that informs how he directs a project on set. In all his reflections, you'll find plenty of practical tools and grounded wisdom that will inspire you to get back to creating. Here's my interview with director and editor, Ryan Vera. Quick question that I've been asking some other people, and that is, what draws you into a flow state or a creative flow? And like, how do you get into it? How do you keep it?
Oh my gosh. For me, flow states is everything. I feel like if you can't get into a flow state, then like you're just, I don't know, trying to stick a square peg through a round hole. It's so funny. If I don't get into a flow state, then I end up just trying to find organizational things to do or things that that are like, I need to get this done, but this isn't going to help the edit come together or get that idea on paper, but just what's the busy work I can do I can get it out of the way and get in the flow state. But for me, I mean, a lot of it's the older I get, it is actually like being disciplined and like getting good sleep, like getting up early, going on a walk, not getting up 5 minutes before I need to and scrambling around. Because then it's just like, if you start your day right, I feel like it's so much easier to get in that flow state for me. That's the older I get. The true answer, though, is music, I would say. Music has like the key to my soul, for sure.
I love that. Now, do you have a variety of music depending on what type of flow state you need to get into? Or
Oh,
what
yeah.
type of mood or what type of day? Or what?
So it's either hard techno, hard rap, heavy metal, and I'm just like feeling just full of swag. Or it's just Brian Eno, ambient music, the Silent Hill soundtrack, that kind of thing, getting that really melancholy. Melancholy is catnip for my creativity, but it sucks because I don't usually feel like happy when I'm feeling melancholy, but I feel like deep. Yeah. So it's those two moods.
Okay. And then does this show up in all areas, like whether you need to write an email, a script, or be in an edit or some other type of session, or
it needs to show up in all areas. There's certain projects that I do that complement that energy really well. Like if it's a super creative project, but if you're doing a project that's like not quite as creative and you're there to make the client happy, like I do a lot of like industrial work. And so for that, you kind of have to find that vein somewhere of like creative excitement. You really have to force it. It's like, it's not the most beautiful thing, but you turn the lights dim and you have a little alcohol and then it becomes beautiful to you. And so, I'm trying to find any project, try and find the flow state. And so I try and find like, what's that mood I can find that actually helps the edit or actually helps the directing idea.
Yeah.
Even though it's like it's dysphoric, it doesn't make sense to that project. It like at least it gets me in a place where I can try
Yeah.
and push the boundary, even if it's just a little bit.
Yeah. We had another intern. He would always light an editing candle. Have you
Mine's
heard of this? Do you have
no,
one?
but I do incense, and I actually
Okay.
have it going.
Okay.
I have it going right now.
Yeah, to help like activate, like it's part of the ceremony to activate the editing mind and then the body to engage.
Oh yeah, and smell is so important. Smell is in my opinion, the most important sense. I mean, like not to like live, but it's underrated. Like it puts you in a space. I don't know. Smells can take me back, man. A smell can hit me. I can get yoinked into like a different time period altogether. So like ignites a bit of like nostalgia and creates a bit of nostalgia around what you're doing for me, but I love it. Yeah, smell's important.
So, how did you get your start into filmmaking?
I was a writer and a musician first. So like I was super
When you say
ambitious
writer, you mean like writing songs
writing
or yeah,
or
okay.
writing like books. I wrote like a
Oh,
250-page novel when I was like a junior in high school. And I was homeschooled. I
nice.
had all the time in the world. And then I also wrote music. I have a professional piano album that I had produced when I was 16 of like original solo piano songs. Still
Oh,
out there on Spotify in the world. But yeah, that was my first love. It was like writing and music. I loved storytelling. I loved music was more of like a tactile art, like you're feeling things with your fingers. I was
yeah.
playing on real pianos, so it was the hammers hitting the strings and like echoing
Mm,
inside of the piano and then in the space that you're in before it came into your ears. There was
yeah.
like an interaction with the environment and the sound and like my fingers and my feet, and it was just more tactile and there weren't words. So it was like it kind of hit a different
Mm,
thing. There wasn't like a prefrontal cortex logic to it, but it felt good. And I also can't read music. So like back then, I couldn't even tell you where middle C was on the piano, but I could play a whole album's worth of original songs just by entering a flow state and feeling my way through it.
mm,
And so that is where I got my start. And when I was growing up, I was only allowed to listen to worship music
okay.
exclusively. I was homeschooled and home churched
Oh,
back
wow.
then.
You're home a lot.
Yeah, pretty much exclusively. So I could only really associate with this group of people that were a part of the home church that we were part of. So like from about 16 to 18, when I got my first job, was like
Okay.
no interaction with the outside world, essentially.
Were there red robed kind of creatures around the property that kind of kept you in the area or?
No, but the demons were out there.
Oh,
And we
okay.
would
So it kind
always
of,
pray them away and, anoint the forehead with oil, anoint the door with oil, that kind of stuff.
oh, wow.
You gotta ward that stuff off.
Okay, I gotcha. So maybe some
But
more overlap to my movie reference there than I anticipated.
exactly. Well, yeah. And then so I skateboarded a lot. So the other end of it is I skateboarded a lot. I started that around like 12, 13. And I had a lot of friends from about 12, 13 all the way to 16 when we clamped down and started really getting isolated and stuff. But
Okay.
that period, I was doing a lot of skateboarding and I got a camcorder for Christmas. And the skateboard aesthetic really like
Mm,
also fundamentally injected itself into like my psyche. And it's never
I
really
notice it in
fully
your work.
left. Yeah, it's never
I
fully
still
left.
do.
It's still the thing I chase in all of my projects. But yeah, so I picked up the camera and we just started filming each other doing tricks and stuff around the neighborhood at schools, getting kicked off property by police, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And it really combined like all the things that I was like exploring around that time, which was like writing that silly little fantasy book in high school and then the piano album and then the love of that skate aesthetic and visual. I love visual art as well. So it was like everything was packaged together.
Mm,
And I really got into editing there too. because like, especially with skateboarding, it's about the motion of the trick and like the
Mm-hmm.
momentum of how you're moving and how you cut one shot into the next. And you could get really creative with the music you picked and how you told that story. And so it was like, it felt a lot like playing piano to me
Oh,
because the flow state was very musical and editing was very rhythmic. It was like creating a song. You have your
mm-hmm.
intro, you're getting into like the meat of the song, then you have your hook, and then you have your bridge, and not necessarily so like wooden and blocky like that, but very much you're telling a story in music. And editing, you're using the way you're sequencing shots, the composition of the shots. There's like a whole grammar to it, that's
Yeah,
very like nonverbal and it's very interesting and it's fun to
yeah,
play around with.
yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, did you see the movie Dee Dee?
Dee Dee. No, what is that?
Oh man, delightful film. A coming of age story for an Asian American kid growing up like in the early 2000s, and definitely pulled me back. But yeah, he's a video guy that gets bonds with some skateboard kids and starts doing videos for them. It's a fantastic film.
Oh, this looks
Highly
awesome.
recommend. Oh yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll definitely add this to my watch. This is great.
Yeah, it's really great. Well, and then we got to know each other because you
Went
interned.
to Liberty. Yeah, I went to Liberty and then we met, I think my junior year. But I had actually, when I was in class, I remember a professor brought you guys in back when you were abandoned films, brought you guys in and had y'all demonstrate a bunch of your work. And I think this was my sophomore year. And I was like, I remember seeing the carpet shoes spot that y'all had done.
Yeah.
And I was
Okay.
like, whoa, this is so cool. Because at the time I hadn't really figured out I went into college to be an English major because I
Okay.
loved literature, I loved writing, I loved reading, so all that stuff. I love storytelling. But then I was like, hey, like I've been doing videos for so long. These guys look really creative and they're like using it in a way that there's job potential there. And it was like right
Mm-hmm.
during the DSLR revolution too.
Yeah.
So the barrier of entry just exploded, and you guys were coming in here with really fun, creative ideas that you didn't need $1 million to do, and actually creating work and making a job out of it. And I was like, dang, I think I could do this. I think I could do this. So I like really like took it serious kind of from that point.
I don't know
And
if I
it
knew
really
that.
was you guys. Yeah, I've told you, but I mean,
I guess I mean it's been so many years
it
now, so
has
maybe I've
been
just
so many
forgotten
years.
this story. I don't even remember. And I was there. Was I there, or did someone
Yeah, it
else
was
come in
you and
from our
Judd.
company?
Yep, it was
We
you and
did,
Judd.
and we showed a few commercials.
Yep.
And well, that's really cool. Boy, I have like a blank memory of that.
It was pretty awesome. So
Yeah, I mean,
when
I remember that commercial. That was one of my early commercials that I directed for on the commercial side. There at a previously called Abandoned Films, now Cry. Yeah.
you
Okay,
abandoned.
cool. Yeah,
Never
we
mind.
we abandoned.
That's
Yeah, we have a
terrible.
whole blog post about that. Yes, that we leaned into that joke for sure.
When we abandoned, we cried, but now we're cry.
Yes,
Oh, it's terrible.
we,
But
we
I'm a
did a
dad,
nice
so
little
you gotta forgive me.
we did a nice little meme that basically showed Terminator going down into the lava and the whole Abandoned Films logo on
That's so sick.
it. But okay, cool. And then you came and interned with us.
Yep. Yep. And that
Yeah.
was great. It was awesome because I think we were doing a lot of videos around fundraising for different organizations, which
Yeah.
was super, super awesome and very underrated. Right now, what I've been figuring out, like trying to navigate quite a bit as a creative is when you're early on, when I was a kid, every venture I did was like, this is my creative expression. This
Mm,
piano song, this is my skate video, this is my book. And then you kind of just imagine yourself just becoming that is just everything you do is just your vision.
mm-hmm.
And I think a part of maturing in your career is realizing that making sure you're not getting too much like, I don't know, a realistic expectation of kind of what you do and how you
Yeah.
take your passion and your skill sets and you support a client rather
Mm-hmm.
than the other way around, which is your skill sets. Your client is supporting your skill sets and passions. And it's like a subtle difference, but it's very important
Well, and we were very impressed. We had a lot of interns for quite a few years there, and they would come and go, and sometimes it was definitely much more work to have an intern than to not have an intern as far as being able to help. But we had quite a few over the years that also infused a lot and then became either part-time employees or vendors or freelancers, or in our case, I mean, you became like the go-to editor actually for that particular set of projects. Yeah. And I'm like,
Making
wow,
heart
he started,
symbols in my
and
hands.
you did. I think I would rather, you can approach it either way, but in general, from my experience, I think I would rather have somebody that's so excited to creatively infuse their passion and their vision into a project, no matter what it is, and having to make sure that it's in service to the client, than someone that is uninspired but trying to just give the client what they want. It's generally a lose-lose situation in
It
that
is.
context.
Well, because
It
you go back
really
to that
is.
flow state that you were talking about earlier, to where if you can't find
Mhm.
that flow state, I mean, the editing process becomes miserable. I mean, it is. It's a miserable. I mean, at face value, it's miserable. You're sitting here at your computer hunched over for sometimes 14 hours a day, genuinely. And
Mhm.
you're like nudging these blocks and keyframes and ad nauseum. And, on
Mhm.
at face value, it's just a grind. So, like, it's that flow state is the difference between being absolutely miserable and the edit just being the barest
Mhm.
minimum creatively, and having some fun, time flying by, and you get a good product. And
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
there, you're gonna edit 14 hours, so you might as well have fun doing
Absolutely.
it. I
And it
mean, be
helps
present.
service the product. So,
Right.
yeah, we were very impressed very early on that you would infuse it. There was a sense of excitement and gratitude and infusion, and to make it, and then even for the many years that you edited those projects, you continued to infuse new ideas, and sometimes you're like, I'm gonna do some hand drawn animation. I'm gonna put that into this. And I'm like, go for it, man. Let's see if we can pull it off with our client that was not expecting it whatsoever. And
I
I
still do
mean, it
stuff
was
like that.
great. Yeah. And that was one reason as well, as things naturally evolved and you just kept on creating your own work, your own passion projects, but then also other client work that we saw and really liked your eye as a director, which was there the whole time, as you just mentioned back in the skateboarding videos, and how you're pulling everything together. I was like, look at this portfolio. I like this, and it's different than our other directors that we have. Would you like to be on here? And let's talk about it. Now, in that, I would like to talk about your process as a director too. But one thing that definitely all our directors like to be involved in the edit, and that's something I love. But you're stand apart a little bit differently in that you generally are the editor on most of the projects that you direct. And
Yeah, it's
so I
true.
definitely want to lean into that too. And that kind of gives you a different eye, carrying it all the way through production and to edit and then final delivery. And those are very rewarding as well. And so
Yeah.
wanting to lean into that too, as far as, again, your process, one thing we wanted to do this series, as far as with our roster directors and some of our hip pocket directors, so that people can kind of listen in and understand different strengths and or just experiences and personality aspects. And we're already kind of vibing a little bit there already. But let's take an example. You did our Limitless project. We had kind of a creative brief, many interviews and discussions, and really downloading what the organization was about, and did some creative development initially. But then you came on and you put together a full, not just director's treatment, but basically multiple concepts of approaches that could be taken to it. So, yeah, let's just talk about that a little bit. Do you remember that one?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Yeah. And the organization was so awesome. I mean, it's rare that you get to work with the real deal that's like very much there for the progress of what they're doing rather than the market share of what they're doing, which
Oh,
is
yeah, absolutely.
very,
Yeah, we
very
wanted to
helpful.
be a part of it. And for everybody listening, you can definitely look up Limitless Solutions, but they are innovative, in providing and advancing technology, particularly in the idea of robotics, providing bionic arms for kids with limb difference, but also adults. They're expanding out, but right now their clinical trials are providing bionic arms for kids with limb difference. So it was a really special organization.
With like an ambitious goal of like making them as accessible and affordable as glasses.
Yes.
Which is kind of that next level thing. It's like pretty crazy. Very ambitious.
And I love that parallel to it. Really cast a vision for the future. And we think about living in today's society, and if we didn't have that ease of access to glasses, a lot of people's lives would be very different. That's for sure.
Yeah. And what I liked about them too is I think they were very aware of like subverting kind of their own boxes that they could get in. I think this was something that we were having to navigate as we were developing the creative, especially I think people, and I've actually since then, I've even run into that in other companies similar to Limbitless here in Atlanta, where just very good-hearted companies, they tend to get that deal with children is specifically, they tend to get boxed into this is my superpower or I'm a superhero. That's like the go-to for so many, and people kind of have that expectation. I think there was a lot of watch out for that kind of stuff. You know, I think they were looking for something a lot more tangible and a lot more authentic and less like conceptual and corny. They were like, you know, listen, the heart of the company, the heart of the kids, how can we capture that? I think was kind of that next level for us, making it mature and you know, work.
Yeah, and organic and authentic and just down to earth. So it was very interesting to get like the nuances there, and
it felt pretty collaborative when we were there
definitely.
too. They were collaborating with the kids that they were working with. It was very much like we're in this together thing. And then also this was also a big source of creative like soil for us, was the fact that the kids could design their own, how their arm looked. There was like a whole interface to designing that. And then they would design custom video games that would incentivize the kids to learn how to like flex the right muscles to move the arm. I mean, it was just, there was a lot to work with there. And it was like they were there to make the process as fun and intuitive as possible for the kids, which in turn for us as filmmakers allowed us to have fun with it as well, have fun with the tech. They were just fun people. The students that they worked with from the university were just, the attitudes were great, and everyone was happy to be there and felt like they were on a mission. The employees felt like they were on a mission. The environment for the kids was fun and very creatively focused. So there was a lot to work with, from the tech, the video games, and also the relationships and personalities. I felt like there was a lot of like very quick to read characters in the film. Like I feel like you'd see different people, but they felt like full characters rather than just kind of like you could almost switch it out with stock. You couldn't do that.
No, I could not. Tell me more about that process. So like, how did you prep shooting and creating something that has so many real life, real players in the midst of it, while at the same time pulling something that has like a cinematic quality together, that has a creative vision that's cohesive? Yeah. Tell me about that process. Like, how do you approach something like that? How did you approach it in that one?
For me, the equity that you had built with the client was huge. I mean, you had developed your relationship with them for a while. Y'all had been working on this project for a bit before I came in, which that can't be understated for making a process go smooth like this. And then the second surface thing is just, it's getting a good DP who gets like the heart of what you're doing, to where there's this minimal having to fill in the gaps, where there's like a natural cohesion between you as the production company, me as the director editor, and then the DP, to where if all that's working well, then I can focus on what's best for me, which is really trying to read the room, whether it's on the meetings that we had, kind of going over the concepts with them, getting a sense of what worked for them, what didn't work for them, and also getting a sense of what their personalities were, you know, and getting a sense of like what the environment is as much before we get there as possible. And so that when you're there, if we're in the lab and we've got students working on the software that kind of designs the arm and 3D printing and stuff, you're really trying to find as quickly as possible so you can keep the schedule moving. And you're not, we like with this project, it was very much docu-style in the traditional sense, where we didn't necessarily set up a ton of lights with a fixed storyboard on every single shot. There was a discovery on set. And so in order to make that happen, especially because this was their first clinical trial too. So like they were high stakes, a lot of emotional pressure for the parents and the kids alike. And so you're trying to navigate all of that. And with your eye, you've just got to find what's that cinematic thing that I can find here that doesn't just capture something well on the camera, but captures something true to the person that you're filming. And it's like, that's such an abstract concept, and it's not like super practical, but it's like, it gets back to the flow state. It is a flow state. You see the person there, you see them, and you can capture something that brings about their personality in a way that doesn't feel too polished, but it also feels cinematic. And again, that's why I brought up the DP, is because James, who's the DP on that project, he's just
James
such
Martin.
a sincere person that he didn't just get how to like capture it compositionally, what I was going for, but also he's like such a sincere person that it was just very easy to like work with him on that side of things, to where it's not just about getting the sexy shot, it's about capturing the personality. And so it felt like it brought out the characters really well.
Well, and based on your references too, James Martin really did a great job on downloading and understanding and mining where your mind was at, where your gut was at, your emotions, what you were trying to do as far as on the prep side, and established this concept that there's all this technology and prep and design and manufacturing that kind of goes into the process that they wanted to capture. The students and the teachers and the researchers putting all that together. And there was a certain aesthetic quality that you're going for there. And he translated to, let's shoot this mostly on wide angle lenses and refined and on sliders, and that we really capture this. And then when it came to actually giving the kids the presentation of the arms, and then the working through as they're kind of learning and training and experiencing it involved, that then you shot that on widescreen anamorphic and handheld, and you're there with them, and there's an organicness to that, and then your ability to edit those together and provide that. It really was quite a delightful surprise on how well it worked, and the mixed aspect ratios even worked. And
well, and the other thing we did,
you don't really, something feels really like cinematic and beautiful about this moment. It's self-evidently so that way, but then you're also capturing it visually that way too.
Yeah, well, and another thing too was like, I'm a very tactile person, getting back to the music and all that stuff. When I'm like thinking through a direction, edit, shot, I'm like inside of myself, I'm like touching different textures until one, like, oh, this feels nice. So like we shot wide, but also we shot pretty close, like hyper close. We even brought macro lenses and like distorted the view of it. So like there's a sense, I like being super close to something and super far from something and living in that world.
There was this back and forth, yes, especially during like the manufacturing and the going in right in the middle of the tactile kind of manufacturing of it and the designs of it, and then pulling far back wide. Yeah, that was
and
great.
like they had a 3D print machine that it would drop, so it would go and then it would drop, and then they had another machine where the lid would go. So like when I'm directing for an edit, I'm looking for stuff like that, because you can go boom, boom, and then if something, there's like a movement to the shots, and you don't have to like, I feel like a lot of people like really rely on post transitions to get that energy, but there's something kind of, it can feel canned sometimes. Like I feel it, like if you're going to do post transitions, you really have to think through, like you can't just slap it on anything. You've got to really understand the actual real world momentum of what you're filming. And so those were things like when the hand would open, it was like, whoosh, there's like, and I do a lot of sound. I do all the sound design for my films too. And I mix a good majority of them. And I love sound is so big. So if you have a shot, if you're in and you hear like in person, it's like, know that not just the visuals of that are good, but picking shots, because the sound is going to be really engaging also. Is
Mhm.
like huge for stuff like that.
Yeah.
The other thing that I felt like I was able to contribute to this project too, because this project was very much a collaborative work on all
Mhm.
fronts, was I think that second day, one memorable part of that shoot was being able to pull aside one of the dads and his daughter and set them up on a picnic table out front. And we were able to
Mm.
shoot with a bit of a longer lens with a shallower depth of field. So we had a really nice bokeh behind them. And we were a little further away so that they could have a bit of a private moment. And I just encouraged the dad. I was like, man, like, this is a big deal. This is awesome. I would love
Mhm.
for you to just talk to your daughter about, how proud you are and just what are your feelings around this moment. And that was really the only prompting that I gave him. And I stepped back to give them some privacy. And James he was so
Mm.
reliable and just making sure that he was flexible in capturing that moment. But the dad just started pouring his heart out to his
Mhm.
daughter and then giving her a very authentic hug. And that's the kind of stuff like
Mm.
that I'm super interested in stuff like this, because it's a lot of times you have this sit down lit, and Netflix kind of has done this into the grave where it's like every documentary on Netflix is like this. They'll rent like a postmodern Airbnb, even if it's a working class interview. And
Mhm.
it's just the insincerity is just through the roof. With a moment like that, it's very everyday, very
Mhm.
much just a dad just sharing something special and trusting us with that. And we're just on a
Mhm.
picnic table and there's trees and just sun and we had no extra light.
Mhm.
But with a long lens and a good bokeh and good composition and
Mhm.
an authentic relationship between him and his daughter, there was an interview moment that we were able to use to clinch that middle part and tie that
Yeah.
relationship together. That was not a sit down interview. It
No, I
felt like
love
we
that.
were privy, emotionally voyeuristic, but in a very positive, enriching sense. I think creates a kind of grounded reality. And that's like what I'm trying to
Absolutely.
find, even if it's a super corporate project. Is there any way within these limitations that I can create something like that? But I mean, with Limitless, they really trusted, again, the equity you built. They had a lot of
Mhm.
trust for us. And especially on a day like that, which is so emotionally intense for the parents, for the kids, the fact that the parents and kids had the trust to the organization had the trust of your company, was the
Mm.
perfect storm to be able to inject some of that much more intentional documentary filmmaking into the spot.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it was very special. And Limitless is doing such cool things and using cool products in order to do it. So they have corporate sponsors that come in and do videos. They've had Adobe come in and do some videos, and that ended up being, of course, they're touting and advertising their product. And they've had Microsoft come in and do some things. And they've been very appreciative. They love working with them. They have some cool videos from it, but basically they didn't have anything that was just their own and their own ability and heartbeat to kind of cast the vision and as far as what they're about. And so to be able to work with you and for you to take the such a emotive and organic and authentic approach is something that they're extremely grateful for, and they love using this video and they love that collaboration. And I think it's also, of the videos on the Cry portfolio, it's also one of the ones that most consistently makes people cry. So
Oh,
it's
I
such a
mean that
beautiful thing.
that middle section
Mm,
is intense in a good way. Yeah.
so real.
Very proud of that.
Absolutely. So, what about like a project like the Atlanta Hawks? So, not quite as going in there documentary, there's a nice special moment happening, but there still is kind
Right.
of this organic energy that you're bringing to it. Tell me something about like their game
Yeah.
opener kind of video that you do.
Man, I had so much fun with those because it's like the kind of the other end, between like my Brian Eno and my heavy metal. I oscillate between kind of those two personalities. This is much more in that, like, you got to tap into a bit more of the swag, which was fun. The first one I did, I got to fully creative direct as well as direct and edit. They were smaller budgets for the scale of what we were doing, But it was such an exciting project. I'm very lucky. I have very talented friends here in Atlanta that are some of the best producers and DPs that I've gotten to work with. And James was someone I'd met here in Atlanta also for Limitless before he moved to New York. There's so much talent here in Atlanta. It's very sad to see the film industry moving on from the city, side note, because they're missing out. I got to bring on my friend Kevin Wall, who does a lot of production here, my friend Trevor May, who's a DP in town. And so it was like we just got to like dream and like get scrappy. And like it was the purpose of the video was to open a bunch of the Hawks games throughout this season. So it was like playing on a Jumbotron. And the ask was like, hey, we want love for Atlanta to be here, as well as this to feel hype as hell. Those two directives are great, you know.
It's a great combo right there.
Exactly. So we got to have a blast. The Hawks are always so good to work with. They provide us with a lot of their like semi-professional practice players that we got to film street basketball scenes with in Atlanta. There was just so much I loved about both of the shoots that we did there for them. I could talk all day.
That's great. But just kind of in an overarching aspect, I mean, you're making shot lists and scenes and such, but then you're also feeling the organics of the moment, and you can definitely tell your influences into skater culture videos that you've done in the past, but at the same time applying it to beyond, of course, just skating and to kind of the energy of the city.
Yeah, my shot list was pretty loose and allowed for room to like explore, because I just like I want to find momentum and moments to edit with. I don't want to lock myself in to like this shot goes to this shot goes to this shot, so we shoot it like that. A lot of times, I mean, for some projects they're so bloated you have to be laser focused, and that's the right call for a lot of projects. But for a project like this, when you're trying to capture again any kind of authenticity, whether it's for Limitless, but the Hawks, they really wanted this to feel authentically Atlanta, like genuinely. And so for that, you have to have a plan, you have to be organized, but you have to create room to play. And if there's a playfulness, and if you can find room for playfulness, even though with budget constraints, we really did a lot in a little bit of time. But that's because, you know, we had people at the top of their game just having fun and moving and keeping it going. Yeah. So that was essential to getting that authenticity and energy, staying flexible and just having an eye for moments, characters, stuff like that.
Yeah. I love those spots. They're fantastic. I love the way they make me feel. So in the industry, what are kind of like maybe existential struggles that you've noticed either in yourself and or industry wide?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually the question that my head has been very much at in a lot of ways. And I don't know if it's just me that's feeling this, but I felt when I was coming up in college and early in my career, maybe it was a little delulu, but I felt like visual work was just like, this is it, this is important. And it just feels so creatively enriching and stuff. And I think the entry point into like the stuff I've been like working through now is we're at a point of just excess. And with AI, you know, it's a tool. With AI, there's a lot of laziness where people are just literally vomiting content at a scale that's unimaginable. I think last year I saw some stat that like there was more images created since Midjourney started than in the entire history of the human race. And I'm sure that's exponentially worse right now, to where it's like I'm a visual artist, whether it's I do illustration, I do video, all these things have always been so important to me, you know, capturing life. But there's so much of it. It's like a fire hose all the time. And it's causing, because of the way algorithms are targeting people, it's splintering. You notice in like art culture, there's not as much homogenous communities, which is weird because it's like both creating more homogeneity. It's kind of flatlining things. It's like the floors raising, ceilings lowering. It's kind of flattening stuff, but it's also splintering things as well in this odd way, to where I'm just like, man, when I do stuff, when I'm like trying to come up with an art project, am I just adding to the noise? Like, why am I making this? Why am I making this? Am I
Mhm.
making this to be seen? Am I making this for social media to be consumed as short form content? Am I making this for a client? Am I making this to make this vision of my dad in my head proud of me? I'm joking, but
Mhm.
like it's really caused me to dig deep and be like, why am I doing this? Is what I do more important than electricians, plumbers, whoever's the people managing our municipal water system? I mean, the
Mhm.
older I get, I'm looking at that stuff and I'm like, that's real. We've got clean water. Like, how the heck did we systematize a municipal water system? What the heck? How did
Mhm.
that happen? That's crazy. That's really
Yeah.
important. And so I think I came up with this like maybe over egotistical view of the importance of visual art
Mhm.
in general. And I think a part of growing up, I've had kids who are everything to me.
Mm.
And a bunch of those things that kind of like center you and you're like, whoa, I'm just a part of this story. I'm not like the rock star. The idea of visual artists and like filmmakers being rock stars is starting to feel sillier and sillier to me. Whereas I just think it's a part of this like obsessed with their own image. I'm reading this book right now called The Cultural Narcissist, written back in the 1970s, late 1970s, that
Okay.
really accurately predicts to a scary degree this culture of narcissism that it's been kind of inflating since then and predicts where we're going to go. And it's like this image obsessed world. As I've kind of realized that, it's been shifting very much my priorities in how I approach, and I have not figured the answer out yet. I think it is worthwhile for all visual artists to truly, truly, at a deep level, wrestle with this deep down because I think we've got to. I think the existential question is we absolutely are adding to the noise, and the noise
Mm.
is not good for us.
Mm.
But the power of something like Limitless as an example, which we
Mm.
talked about earlier, that is real value. You
Mhm.
are helping to raise awareness, and that is a story that needs to be told. And so there is the importance of visual art and visual storytelling is still so important, but it can get lost in like
Mhm.
this deluge of just shit, constant
Mm.
shit. And like the new AI generative social media platforms, which is infinite scroll, they're just as much as I like sometimes am suspicious of stuff and suspicious of social media. I mean, it's like even social media and creators and influencers are going to be cut out of this process as well. So like, how do we become more human, not less human in all of this? And I know that's cliche and corny as hell to say, but it's real. And I don't know what else to say, but the stuff that drew me into this in the first place and the stuff that gets me into the flow state is not where we're going. And so
Yeah.
I'm sitting here like, how the hell do I stay excited and not just stay excited, scale the excitement of my career so I can passionately sell things to clients when it can feel miserable. But I think there's something healthy about that. It's helped
Mhm.
break down this rock star view, which is crazy when you think about it. Like I said before, it makes it
Mhm.
much more realistic. And when you become realistic, I think that's where you can find the human story. And I think you're a better artist when you're realistic. And it's a friction, but like
Mm.
that kind of friction is like really healthy. Then you're servicing your story, not creating something for your own personal brand. And I think
Mm.
so many very, very, very talented filmmakers, visual artists, musicians are falling into this trap left and right, I think, and I absolutely can and have and probably will, is that we like want to create content for our brand rather than like create content out of a curiosity for an
Mm.
idea. And it's very different and the results are very different. And I just think it's a losing battle to create things for a brand because the algorithm is continually getting quicker and quicker. I think before AI, you had to post 3 times a day for Meta's algorithm to kinda I could, fact check me. But I feel like I remember it was like 3 times a day to kinda stay on the algorithm. And I mean, as a visual creator, that's a lot of content that you need to be pumping out, and it's a lot of work to kind of
Mhm.
curate that, and it's a lot of creative energy that you could be spending doing deep work on yourself being curious about something, opening an old book or an old photo, like an old visual art book, and like sitting in a space and like exploring an idea and developing an idea and being in the real world, it takes away from your ability to like actually grow something special. And it's like building these super quick cities. I don't know. The analogy I have is like those old Western movie towns where they'd have like the wooden stilts propping
Oh
up
yeah,
a lot of the town.
It's
There's a
just the
lot of
facade on the fronts.
it's a
Yeah.
lot of facade creation. And I'm not saying this in a preachy way. It's I'm trying to rebuild myself to try and like, I need to like as a professional stay relevant, because I mean companies are having to be a lot faster now too, because the demand content are changing and you have to stay on top of that and be realistic. But I don't want to kill the thing inside me that's special, that I love. And so that's the tension I've been living in existentially, is how do I keep that, slow it down, flow state, where I don't necessarily want to just vomit content for the sake of it, but also stay relevant in the very rapidly changing editing and video production environment. And also like, it's similar to what we were talking about earlier. It's like, where can I find the joy? That's what I'm looking for. It's like, yes, this is changing. I can't change that. I do have to figure out how to fit AI into my workflow as much as I'd rather shoot something real. It's just, I'm not in control, but I still need to provide and I still need to grow my career and I still love what I do a lot. And so where can I find the joy, and see it as a challenge and grow from it? And I'm still working on it, but I'm like determined because I have to.
Well, you mentioned also the reality of real physical relationships, how that transitions how you approach things.
Yep. That's been the thing that I think has helped me the most and given me the most progress on this journey of finding the joy. It's this idea of being present. So I'm going to be here with the client. If we start a journey, whether it's with the Atlanta Hawks, whether it's an art project with friends, whether it's, an awesome documentary with you guys, or an industrial client that has very practical needs, I'm going to be here for months sometimes with you. And we're going to be, our life journeys in the cosmos are intersecting on this industrial spot. You know what I'm saying? It's both ordinary and profound, but you're there, you can't escape that. So you might as well be present. And a big part of being present is just being comfortable and in your own skin and like really seeing like the people that you're with, not as if you're a client, not as like the enemy, the blockage, the barrier to my vision, but you see them as someone like a more whole person. And that's been super helpful for me. And I think maybe some people just, they're so much more natural at that, but I can get caught in the weeds creatively a bit and think too much about the creative process, that it's been helpful for me to really focus in on the people, so that when I'm with anyone, whatever age, whatever background, I want it like to have this like curiosity, a true curiosity. And I just feel like my collaborations have been so much more enriching, and it weathers this like kind of insincere storm of like slop, because no matter, the person is always real. And if AI is like the tool we're using to get to a quicker, cheaper product or something, blah, 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 I'm still working with people. We can still tell jokes. We can still care about what's happening in our real lives and like, and not rush past that too quickly. And I don't know, I've just been finding a lot of joy in relationships, and it's been very grounding because it's off the screen in a big way. And even if it's a Zoom call, there's still a body there. There's still eyes there. You're still, I don't know, trying to keep the spirituality alive in what I do. But I think I've been a lot more intentional about that than I think I've ever been. And it's become a lot more intuitive since, but it's just something that's really grounded me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And years ago when we developed the values to our company, Cry, and I think I even had a bit of resistance as far as putting together external or even really internal values. It felt like a corporate jargon kind of talk kind of situation, but then started leaning into it more and more. I'm like, no, there's certain things that I genuinely do value, that we genuinely, when we show up as collaborators with each other, with our clients, with our vendors, with our freelancers, with our whoever they might be, with our partners, that there's a lens of which we go about doing things. And so hearing you say like curiosity, and that is a huge part. That's number one for us, is to be able to approach art and life and nature and ideas and people and situations with curiosity. And that leads to a sense of wonder, that leads to, I believe, a sense of gratefulness, that leads to a sense of joy and
Yep.
spark. And
You
and
have to
related
have those
to,
things.
absolutely. And then related to that, as you're talking about like kind of the word content's actually kind of a trigger word for me.
Same. No, for
Yeah,
real. For
it's
real.
such, it's like this neutral thing, like content, like just so it can just be anything. You know, that's what it just feels like to me, rather than are we putting something into the universe, into the society that is giving on some way. And
Yeah.
so that goes into like our second one, generosity, like this idea of wanting to be able to make sure that it's always a win-win-win situation for everyone that work, for our clients, for us, for the end audiences, for whoever might be consuming, even if they're not the target market, either of the film or of the product, that they can engage the project, the piece of work that we're a part of, and go away, hopefully, a better individual or better off, if you will, than
Yeah.
before they encountered it. And in the past, I might have even rejected or been allergic to saying statements like that. But no, I don't shy away from it anymore because I have had that experience. There's so much films and commercials and pieces of artful work, even if it's in the commercial space, that I truly have gone away myself better off than before I engaged
Oh
it.
my
And it
gosh.
gives life.
Yeah.
And so I love being a part of this. So it gives me great joy to hear those things echoed in you, and the same struggle, maybe on a more emotive, artistic level. Like I consider you more of a true creative than myself, but
No,
just
no.
kind of like emotes out of you. I'm like, when I'm working on a project and the sounds, it's like I can tactilely feel it up against like my brain and my soul, and then I kind of search after the same thing. I hear you speak, and it's funny because it's so you. It's genuine. You're not like putting on an air of those types of wordings. It's just like how your mind works and how you experience the world around you, and I think it makes you very empathetic and makes you very joyous and engaged and moving forward. I'm glad you've been honest with that.
It's so cliche, but you're right. It is genuinely just how things
No,
affect me.
yeah.
You know, when I listen to music, I have goosebumps, you know. It's like my whole body reacts to things, not just like my brain. It's
Yeah,
tough.
absolutely. And so, there's been a few times that you said, "Oh, it sounds corny," or "This is corny," but it's genuine. And I'm like, the word cheesy and corny and even
Cringe.
cliche or cringe, I just kind of stay away from using those words, and I just focus more on like, but is it
Me.
earnest? Is it
Yeah,
genuine? Is it
exactly.
me, or is it an authentic encounter? Because it's so easily we can quickly dismiss or devalue something that there's
Oh,
no reason it
yeah.
needs to be in the midst of it, whether in ourselves or in others.
Oh,
And
yeah. And post-internet
yeah.
culture is just gas on the fire for that. I mean, everything's ironic, everything's cringe, everything's the earnest is not in meta right now, is not the status quo currently. It's
No.
currently how
But
disaffected can you be?
I'm very happy to push the other direction.
Yeah, me too. I don't know. This kind of like nothing is serious, unserious approach to stuff, I think is just becoming so common right now and so gross
Mm,
that I think there is value and scarcity is what brings value. So when something becomes too common, it loses value. When something is scarce, it gains its value. And I think earnestness and authenticity are going to be very scarce. I think that it is worthwhile to hold on to our souls as much as humanly possible because we're going to need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have to go in a few minutes, but
Yeah, one more shout out I would say for me, because you touched on this earlier, was, again, me wrestling with the value of visual art. But yeah, movies, like good movies, cinema specifically, cinema
mm-hmm.
has been so crucial for my development as a person, especially with my like ultra religious background, kind of deconstructing and then coming out of that and rebuilding something real. Cinema was such a important tool for me to like expose myself to thoughts, ideas. If it was a good artist, like really putting you in a different headspace, provoking and being provocative and like challenging. And like, there's so many directors whose perspectives have really helped shake me loose and shake me out of a kind of consumerist slumber, I would say. That's been such an important part of my journey, whether it's documentaries like Paris is Burning or Streetwise are two like good examples of documentaries that have fundamentally, once I watched those, Streetwise particularly, and if you haven't seen Streetwise, I would say watch that immediately. It's hard to find. It's about homeless kids in Seattle, I think back in the 80s, early 80s, mid 80s. But man, I've seen that a couple of times, and every time I watch it, it moves me to like a degree that not many films do. It's like a perfect documentary in my opinion. And then there's another documentary I saw recently called, hold on, let me make sure I'm getting the name right. Yeah, The Mark of Cain is another documentary that really moved me quite a bit. That's about tattoo culture in Russian prisons. But I feel like there's a lot of tie-in to that with a lot of larger ideas. But that's the kind of authentic filmmaking I want to make. And those kind of films really do ground me and keep me grounded that no, it's not just content slop. There is real value. There's ways that I can contribute to a functioning society as a filmmaker. And that I need to be looking for ways to do that as much as I can.
Yeah, I love that. You probably already just said it just now, but what would be something if you could go back and tell your earlier stuff? Yeah, sorry. If you could go back and tell your earlier self something, yeah, what would you say?
I know what I would say, and this is corny and cringe, but when I was in my early 20s, I played too much video games, straight up. I would have slapped myself around, but like, no, dude, come on, reel that back in, my guy. Yeah, spend more time outside with people. I think I was going through a period of life for I think a few years in my mid 20s where I just was I didn't have much of a vision for where I wanted to take things. And I felt like I was swept up in life because I had kids very young. And so it was very confused. And I think a part of my generation, I think, medicates with video games quite a bit. And it's great. It's fun. I love it. But it was distracting at that point. So if I could go back, and it sounds dumb, but I would slap myself around a bit and be like, yo, tone it down, my guy.
But with the redirect.
With the redirect.
Something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Don't be so insecure, because I was very insecure about my super religious homeschool background for a very long time. So I would encourage myself, hey, trust yourself. People aren't judging you as much as you think they are. And just have fun, be comfortable, meet people, be curious. My old self, I was curious. So yeah, those would be the things I would say.
I love that.
Awesome.
All right.
Justin, it was good
pleasure
chatting,
to chat with you.
Always.
I kind of just want to do more podcasts just to make sure that we stay connected. So
absolutely. I need to find my way up to New York soon so we could kick it.